again, I'm Jason Katzenback from Amazing, and with me today, a special guest is Andy Murphy, who is actually a mindset coach, who I actually got introduced to a few years ago, and for pretty much a couple of years, he was actually my coach as I was going through some hard times. And obviously, right now, a lot of us are going through some hard times. In fact, the world is. They said that over 2 billion people are right now affected by this in some way or another directly. That's a huge, huge impact. Obviously, the news has been covering it all the time. And in fact, that's part of the problem, is that there's just this huge, huge overload of information going right now. And we're going to talk about that. I've been through personally a lot over the last couple of years, and I don't want this to be a negative thing. I'm going to show you that I do have joy in my heart every day. Not that I don't struggle sometimes, but a couple of years ago, I lost my oldest daughter to cancer. And last October, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. So going through those kind of things, I've had a huge impact on me on having to figure out how to reduce anxiety in my life. Things that I've done is I've quit drinking alcohol. I exercise, I eat right, I meditate, and I use different products. There's actually something called the Fisher-Wallace stimulator, which is an electromagnet thing that I wear a couple times a day. It's made a dramatic impact on me. It's helped me so much to be able to focus better, to keep things in perspective. And one thing you want to remember is, as stress comes up in your life, your mind kind of stores them. And then what ends up happening is all of a sudden you have all these anxieties. So suddenly when, for example, say that your spouse comes up to you and say, hey, we have to talk to the accountant tomorrow. And all of a sudden you find, your head's ringing, and just a little thing like that sets you off. And that's because you're not taking care of yourself in such a way that you're dealing with the small stuff. You've heard that saying before, don't sweat the small stuff. Well, that's so easy to say. And even meditation, oftentimes they say, when you meditate, you're supposed to quiet the mind. Well, that's not necessarily true, because it takes you a bit of meditation to start dealing with those thoughts, dealing with those processes, and it takes a while to get to a point where you're quieting your mind. But we're going to cover all that stuff, and we're going to get right into this. But right away, I want to let Andy introduce himself. So Andy, can you maybe just give a quick little 1-minute synopsis about who you are, why you're qualified for this, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Welcome, everyone. It's awesome to be here, Jason. This is a blast. I appreciate it, sir. And we can help a lot of people with this. And yeah, Andy Murphy, originally from Liverpool in the UK, lived all over the world for the past 18 years. I'm a neuro-linguistic programming master, trainer, and expert in mental performance. I've worked with everyone you can imagine, from superstars like Jason to Saudi Arabian royalty, to startups, to world champion athletes and fighters, and everyone you can imagine in between. And really what I do is help people get control of the mind. Because if you can control your mind, you control your emotion. You do that, we control who we are in that moment, which means, we can create results. And that's understanding the brain, the body, and how it's all connected, So I've done this for 18 years all over the world, and I'm pumped to help you today.
Awesome. So we're going to get right into this right now. Obviously people are full of anxiety. They're stressed. They're worried about the future. What is your answer to that? How do people deal with that?
Well, it's a crazy time right now. And it's what's interesting, I think this is the first time in maybe history that the whole planet's been affected so fast. So what we've got to understand is that we're all human, Jason. And that's the point. It doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or you haven't got a home. We're all human. And we all respond the same way to things, So the unknown is the key word, mate. That's the key word, unknown. And just like you said before about the accountant, right? Somebody says, we're seeing the accountant tomorrow. What happens? It's unknown. And so what happens is there's a certain part of our brain when we step into the unknown that's like an alarm system. It goes, wah, 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 wah. Are you in danger? Okay. Now, it doesn't mean you are in danger, but this fight or flight response, or the amygdala in our brain, well, that's like the oldest part of us. It's actually in your brain stem. So what do I mean by this, to put it in normal terms? It means that when we feel fear or we're stepping into the unknown, we're actually activating the oldest part of ourselves. That's the fight or flight response. So are we getting ready to put our gloves up? Are we getting ready to run? Or are we freezing because we don't know what to do? And this is just the way the brain works. So what's happened is the world's just been flooded with the unknown. So guess what everybody's done? Everyone's alarm system's gone off. And then everyone starts talking to each other about the same alarm. Are we safe? Are we safe? Are we safe? So that starts to get into our psyche. It starts to get through the media. It starts to go everywhere. And the thing about that is the unknown means that, well, think about how normal most people's days are, right? They do the same thing every day. They go to bed at the same time. They get up at the same time. They do the same job for a long time. So any disruption to that creates this panic. So what your first thing you got to understand is we're all human. We're all going to have this fight or flight response. We all get scared with the unknown. And what happens is that creates anxiety, stress, overwhelm, panic, right? And so because of that, what we have to do is start recognizing that this isn't, you're not that special or unique. Well, maybe you, Jason. I'm talking about myself, mate. But human beings, we're not that special or unique. We're not. So what that means is that we have to understand that these are patterns in our head. These are things that are happening to us from chemical wires, etc. This isn't, what it means is, although we feel out of control, when we start to understand the brain and what's happening, we can start to feel in control. And I can go on and on, but does that start to make some sense, Jason?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the things, that you understand, like you talked about the brainstem and everything, is the way anxiety works is before it gets to the logic component of your head, those emotions are firing off and all of a sudden it clouds the logic. And so, it's so hard to be able to understand. And that's why there's certain practices that you have to do.
Yes.
And it's really hard to sometimes do them because you've got all this noise in your head. And we're going to talk about that stuff. So 100%, that all made sense. The first thing I want to address so there's going to be people on this call watching this that they've been laid off, and our hearts go out to you. That I know that's hard. Like thankfully in the United States, there's been a stimulus package. There's a lot of things going on. I know I'm a Canadian. I live in the States. And I know even in Canada, they're talking about income tax relief, and there's a whole bunch of things going on. But that doesn't necessarily cure the right now, especially if you've been laid off. And there's also those people that haven't been laid off, but they're working from home. And now they've got all these new dynamics. I've been working from home off and on I quit my job back in 2005. And since then, we did have an office for Amazing for a while, but actually last March, we transitioned to, and I'm talking about a year ago, to a work at home environment because we felt that our company was at a level where it was mature enough that everyone could have a lot more autonomy. Oftentimes with the new company, it's really hard to do that. So I want to talk first of all to those people that are working from home, where they have no space from family to grow their business, and whether it be working for a company or working to grow your business. What advice do you have for people that are trying to, juggle this new dynamic?
Yeah, it must be wild out there. I've worked from my home or wherever I am in the world for a long time. And so it's very normal to just set up shop. Like I've got my laptop, my little things, I set up shop wherever I am in the world. That's my routine. But for people right now, it's tricky, and I get it. But the truth is behind this, it comes from pain always leads to confusion, which leads to clarity. Confusion leads to clarity. So right now what's happening is everyone's confused. You're confused with the workspace, confused with the future, confused what to do. So we have to learn to take control. And what I mean by that is we take control of our environment, first of all. So you could be in a one-bedroom apartment with 2 kids, right? That's not an excuse. And that sounds quite harsh, but what I mean by that, your purpose is your kids. Your purpose is the security of you're going to build in the future. By feeling or allowing the depression or sadness or overwhelm to take over, you're hurting yourself and everyone around you. First of all, we've got to be kind on ourselves, but then we've got to be able to take control with our purpose and our mission of why we're doing it. So the pain creates that momentum. So some people say to me, I've just got a corner of a room. That's all I've got. There's kids running around. I've got a partner in the background. How do I do this? Well, that corner of the room, you can make it your world. Okay? So what does that mean? It means that if you put a picture of Rocky on the wall, guess what? Every time you're feeling depressed, you look up, that's inspirational, right? I remember doing this in myself. This is called environmental anchoring. It triggers emotions in our brain. But what really is happening is you look at that Rocky picture, you look at the journey of Rocky, but then you also look at the story of Sylvester Stallone to get that role. So that creates this emotion inside of us, okay? So that makes us push on. The other thing that we've got to start doing is controlling what goes in our ears, because there's noise everywhere, right? So you probably saw me with these things in when I first jumped on.
Yep.
What's in there isn't music. What's in there is something called binaural beats. Okay. So I use these every day, teach strategies around these things, and they changed my life many, many years ago. So there's different settings depending on the alpha waves, beta, whatever we were using. But these in your ears, guess what they do? Yeah, they drown out the noise behind you for a start. But what else they do is they tune your brain in to be able to hold focus for a long period of time. So suddenly, what are we doing? We're controlling our environment, controlling what's in front of us, controlling what goes into our ears. And then it's about making sure that we have routines that lead us into being in that peak state or in that moment. Because you might have been dealing with kids or arguing with someone or feeling stressed 2 minutes before, but then suddenly we have to switch on and create magic. And by developing a routine, what that does is it starts to link or allow our brain to sequence together to go into flow. And the more we repeat that pattern, the easier it is to drop into taking action. Got the binaural beats in, we hold our focus and the brain for a long period of time. We control our environment by putting pictures up that inspire us. So what does that do? Well, it doesn't matter what's going on behind you, does it? Right? Because suddenly we're locked on. And if we're coming from passion, the mission, the pain that's going behind you, that you're going to make sure that you sort these kids out, you sort this family out, and it doesn't matter what's happening with the situation. The key question I want you to ask yourself is, how do I solve the problem? This is a problem. Okay, someone let me down. What's your point? Why are you telling me? Solve the problem. Oh, this happened. Okay, solve the problem. The internet dropped. Okay, we solved the problem. And if you get into that mentality, then we're in a constant state of growth rather than being that fixed, right? We're in a constant state of the future and growing into that ultimate version of us rather than holding ourselves back in a box of the past or pain. Does that make sense, Jason? I know I go on a bit.
100%. And first of all, and I'm glad you brought up binaural beats. And I'm going to make sure that we provide links and everything with the recording on here because we're giving some good resources. I use an app called Brainwave, and there's different ones. And there's one that I call it's Quiet Mind. And when I have to do focused work, I put it in, and he's exactly right. all of a sudden, I surround myself with positivity. I make sure I have a sun lamp. I have like good lighting. I make sure I'm in a bright environment. And now I realize that all of you can't do this, but the reality is, when you have a choice on how you can act, how you can react to certain things. And I just actually posted a great quote on this yesterday on our Facebook page and everything. And it talks about, in these devastating times, those that face them with courage and determination win. Those that face it with fear and idleness don't. What we mean by that, courage doesn't mean that you're not afraid. Courage doesn't mean that I'm sitting there, I'm not afraid, but you realize that what you need to do has to be greater than that fear. So that and that's why it's always important. And, I don't want to get into, anyway, that's why it's so important to have a why. Yes. For me, I have a solid why in my life, and it's my family. And so for that thing, I always use this analogy. If you're on top of a building, and I was given this by a good friend of mine, John Gill. If you're on top of a building and the building across from there, and they put a 2x4, and there was a 20-foot gap there, and someone said, hey, I'll give you $1 to walk across that 2x4 to the other building. I mean, you'd say, no way. But all of a sudden, if that building was on fire and your child was on that roof, they wouldn't even have to ask. You would just run across that 2x4 because there's a greater why. And that's what we're talking about. There's it's sad to say, but life's not easy. And the older you get, the more trauma you're going to have in life. You're going to lose people. You're going to get hurt. There's going to be events like this in the world. And so you have to develop and change. If you want to live a long, happy life, you've got to work at it. You've got to be able to put things in place that help you fuel that long, happy life. And I know a lot of times people might be saying, oh, it's easier said than done. 100% it is. Me and Andy are not arguing that at all. This takes work, and it takes consistent action, doing it every day. And you might start today and see it's not working, but all of a sudden it starts working. For example, if you find even with alcohol, and I'm talking about this personally, I only used to have a couple drinks a day. I'd have a couple glasses of wine at night. But all of a sudden, I just cut it out. And within a couple of days, all of a sudden, I'm like, I have that little depression in me wasn't there anymore, that little anxiety. And that is just one little thing that all of a sudden was adding to everything else. So it's something that you have to stick your mind to, but keep doing it. But do yourself a favor, set yourself up for success, like Andy said. Create a work environment, first of all, that's positive and doesn't have a lot of distractions. Now, as much as possible, I understand if you're in a one-bedroom apartment and you have kids or a pet, there's always going to be distractions. But when you can, and just little things like those binaural beats, you put your headphones in and you listen to it, and all of a sudden you'll find an hour later, it's like, wow, was I ever productive at that time? I feel so much better. Now, obviously, there's other things like exercise and everything like that. But it's, again, getting into those routines. So awesome. Now, again, we're doing everyone on YouTube right now watching. I do apologize. We put the links in Facebook. So if you do have questions, if you could go over to the YouTube page and ask your questions there, because we are going to be answering questions if there's any questions at all. All right. So now let's talk about the third question. So what are ways, like, first of all, people are creating more fear in their mind than there really needs to be. And it's just a habit. So, how do you help people? What's your advice for helping people with that phenomenon?
Yeah, this is so important, Jason, that people understand how fear is being created in your brain. It's so important, because what people make the mistake of is thinking that fear is a bad thing. No, fear is a very good thing, right? If you're standing on the edge of a cliff, no, we need to be afraid, right? And that's the first part of understanding these 3 steps or 3 ways that we install fear. Because the first one I spoke about before, the amygdala. It's a real brain response. We do not want to get away from it, because that would make us a sociopath, right? And we don't want that. What we're trying to do is understand. We will become consciously aware of what's automatically or unconsciously happening, okay? This is how we start to take control. This is what I do is called mental performance. It's not self-help. It's a different thing. So first way is the amygdala, the brain, right? You are going to have natural fear responses. The alarm goes off when we step into the unknown. Doesn't mean there's danger. It means we need to look at it logically, not react into it through the emotion, okay? That's the first place that gets installed. The second place it gets installed, well, it's through experience. So look at this way if it was swimming, right? If you were learning to swim when you were young and someone just threw you in the pool, as a lot of people just do, and you had a bad experience, then what happens is you have learned that fear response. What that means is then you're going to have a bigger picture in your head of what the water is, your response to it, everything like that, right? So look at that in your business life. We've all messed up. We've all made mistakes. But we've all been ripped off. We've all been let down by somebody, you know? And so the thing is, that experience can start to build the pattern in our brain of what we don't want. And remember, every time something's happened to you, there's two ways to deal with it. We break down and we go into the negative and we beat ourselves up, lack of self-worth, etc., or we use that as a platform to grow, expand, and learn from. So when we get these experiences, you know, different things are going to happen. But with your businesses right now, guess what? Unknown, alarm, freaking out. But your brain is going back to all of the times that you worried about money, business, everything else. And the challenge with that is we understand the brain works like a muscle. And then we introduce a study of neuroscience called neuroplasticity. It means the brain can adapt and change to whatever is around it. That's epigenetics, that's genetics, but that's what's happening in the brain. The brain wants to adapt. So, but it also wants to repeat. That's the comfort zone. That's the safety. So if you keep going back over all of the things that have ever happened to you in business, that's building this muscle, right? It's building this muscle. There's a certain comfort, it's a dark little comfort to going back to what's familiar, okay? So when we understand that, then guess what? Well, the next step is to understand that that experience we can change through neuroplasticity, the brain. So we can make that choice. So the past doesn't define the future unless we allow it to. The third one is, well, this is what's happening in the world. This is defined. The third way we install fear is through culture. This is media, right? This is movies. This is anything that you're putting in your head. Now, understand what's happened. The world's just been flooded so fast with fear and doom, fear and doom, fear and doom. So everyone's brain starts to learn this. And there's a part of our brain which mirrors or replicates whatever it is around the most. Think about that, right? Go back to the drinking, Jason. If you've never drank a day in your life and you go and hang around with people who drink, what you going to start doing? Yep. If you never exercised a day in your life and you go and hang around with athletes, what are you going to start doing, right? So your brain replicates. If we're hanging around with billionaires, we're going to be well on our way. We might not get there, but that's the point. But when we start to understand this, guess what's been flooded into the world? Fear. So guess what happens every time you watch the news? I had a family member. This is crazy. I went around their house. They have the news on the TV all day about the virus, all day about the virus, all day about the virus. All they're thinking about is the virus. They're panicking and running around, creating, well, fear. And when we start to understand the brain does that, why don't we take control? And taking control means if we understand that the brain is going to replicate what it's around the most, then why wouldn't we be obsessed with watching everything on Amazing? Why wouldn't we be obsessed with putting the good stuff in our brain, the books, the music, the YouTube videos, everything, put the right thing in our brain? It's called a mirror neuron. This means we're going to replicate and become who we want to be like, not who we don't want to be like. So when we start to understand the brain like this, we can take control. There becomes no excuses. Oh, I'm scared. Okay, well, we have material that you put into your head that's going to make you feel confident. So does that make sense, Jason?
100%. And just little things like you don't even realize this. If you're watching movies that are high anxiety, high action, like, as much as they might be fun to watch them, maybe right now is not the right time to be watching them. Start watching shows that calm you, that give you laughter. It's those little things, because again, as your mind is full, now it doesn't have room for any stresses. So any stress, all of a sudden it's making everything blow out of proportion. So, it's exactly like, it's not just food. It's definitely, like, I'd say equal to the food you're eating. And food is so important. Please understand that if you're drinking 7 cups of coffee a day, you're going to be in a high state of anxiety compared to someone, cut back to 1. And I know you're sitting there, oh, I need my coffee. And it's like, well, you've got to pick your battles. And if you're sitting there right now struggling with this, struggling to make sense of the world, and I want to step back for a second. We're by no means like, and I know there's people in situations, for example, that have been laid off, and they're sitting there in a desperate situation right now. And our hearts go out to you. And we realize that it's there's little advice that can truly make a huge impact that'll erase that for you. And we're not saying it'll erase, but we're saying by doing these little things, it eases at least.
Yes.
And so when you're sitting there like struggling with all these things, it's these little practices that can just take it down a notch, help you just a little bit, making sure. And that's why, it's hard, and I saw a guy, it was a video where he threw rice and oil on the floor and used his floor as a treadmill because he didn't have, he had a linoleum floor. And it's like, that's exactly like Andy said. There's a problem, solve it. Yes. And with that, like, and that's where the courage and determination makes, it's like we all have fear, but if you just sit there and curl in a ball and be idle about it, and it just will get worse. Your body will want to shut down, and your body will get used to something. Your body, if you sit a lot, your body gets used to that and it'll want to do that. And so you have to force yourself. You have to get up and do it. And that's why, like, there's shows I'm sure you love, but the way the world is, you can watch them later. When things go back to normal, start focusing right now on things that'll make a difference so that you're not creating so much fear. And another tip I have for you, and I know it's hard, there's so much news out there, but check the news just once a day and not first thing in the morning. So as soon as you wake up out of bed, don't grab your phone and check the news and what's the update, because it's not going to be different than tomorrow. If you're staying in your house and you're safe right now in your house, watch the news later, and maybe even try to watch it every second day, or just, one thing, and I know this is going to be political, and I am not, I'm a Canadian, so thankfully, I don't really have a stake in the government, but of course I do. But, one thing I do see Trump doing is he's trying to be optimistic on things. And I think that's very smart. Now, I disagree with certain things, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, so I'm going to leave it at that. But that's the idea, is we have to focus on positive. We can't be ignorant of what's going on in the world. But if you're just constantly looking at things, and you go on a CNN and they might have one nice, but guarantee there's going to be a story in there about somebody saying that this is going to last 2 years or whatever. It's like, we don't need to worry about that right now. What we have to worry about is day by day, get through today, get through tomorrow, and start building up. And, a question that I want to ask you is, who are you going to be on the other side of this? You have a choice. You could sit there, and whether it's 2 months, 6 months, or 2 years, we don't know. But ask yourself, when this is over and you look back, how did you handle it? Who were you and who are you now? And I know for myself, I want to be able to look back at it with pride. that I feel that I did things that made a difference, that I made an impact on my life. And I did things that I didn't allow the situations to totally control me. And it's just an important, like for me, this question works. It might not work for you, but sit that down and say, who do you want to be on the other side of this? And I hope that helps. Hang on one sec here. Cool. So we're going to go to the next question here. And I just want to remind everyone, the Facebook Live didn't work very well, so we moved everything to YouTube. So we do apologize for that. But if you click on the link, you can go to YouTube, and we're going to be answering questions if you have any, so you can pop them in there. And if not, great. Let's talk about this whole thing of feeling powerless and not in control.
Right. Yeah. That's probably the biggest thing right now, right? Because people they feel like the power's been taken away from them. They can't control anything outside of them. We don't know what's going to happen. The media, And what we've got to understand is a psychological term called potination. Let me explain what this means. And what do we explain? The media, everyone's pumping the fear in right now. So everybody's kind of on edge, right? Everyone's kind of on edge. Just with life. I went to the gas station, the petrol station the other day. It was like out of a movie. Everyone's like, it's like the zombies. And it's like, it doesn't have to be like that. Because what's happening, everyone is on edge. And potination means that once you're in that response or that fear response, it gets amplified. So what that means is like that it could be like, go back to that before, a horror film, right? You could watch a horror film and then that night be sitting in the house on your own and start to get, or hear a noise and start to freak out, but your house is safe. But because we're in that emotion, because we have those images pumping around our brain, we're on edge. And that amplifies everything around us. So when we start to understand that, it's beautiful. Because it's not overreaction, it's our brain tricking us to make sure, again, we're safe. Are you sure you're safe here? Because it's kind of scary. You sure you're safe? You sure? Okay. You can relax then. And when we understand that, it means we do what? Well, we can't control the outside, so we control the inside. So as much effort as you're putting into building a skill set, understand what I teach is that's a skill set. Beautiful thing. But the truth is a skill set, well, it can give you results, but it won't give you all that you want. You could have the best mindset in the world, but without the skill set, it's not going to give you what you want. There's an equation. We master our mind, our brain, we master our skill set. That together creates jet fuel, rocket fuel. And so it doesn't matter what the environment is. To tell stories about my own past, I've been homeless, I've lived in cars, I've not been able to afford food and rent. Doesn't matter. What next? What now? You know? I've got so many stories I could go back over that, but each one leveled me up. It leveled me up. It made me stronger. It made me solve the problem. So if you're sitting there right now feeling hopeless, overwhelmed, no control, understand, amplified, the potination. But besides that, no, it's a choice. It's an excuse. Because I'm not saying it's not hard. I'm not saying that, man. But going to the gym and pumping weights 7 days a week is hard too. But if you keep doing that for 90 days, for 12 weeks, or whatever you want, guess what? On the outside, you're going to look very different. Well, it's the same with our brain. It's the same with our business, man. So that why that Jason was talking about before, that fire inside of us, the reason why we're doing and building this business, that has to come inside of you now. And you have to loop that image around your mind every time you go and get distracted or sabotage or go into a shiny object, right? Or look for an exit. Because the truth is, you're going to wake up tomorrow. the day is going to keep going, right? So all of this where people are Netflixing and chilling, I know people right now that are not Netflix and chilling and earning millions of dollars like in a weekend. It just depends on your perspective. But this is the point. It's the emotion. This is something I teach, and whether people disagree or not, it doesn't matter to me because I got a lot of wisdom behind this. It's the emotion inside of us at that time that creates who we are in that moment. It affects our belief on our attitude towards what we're about to do. So if you're in fear, how is your view of the world? What's your beliefs about what's possible? What's your attitude to getting tasks done? What are you saying to yourself? What chemicals are pumping around your body? What's your physiology, right? What all of these things, that's a fear place, right? A fear bubble, a world. Do you think from a place of fear and overwhelm, you're going to create results? Probably not, right? So we need to do something called a driver. We drive or change the emotion. It changes who we are. It changes our belief and attitudes towards what we're about to do. So again, we go to a horror film or we go to the Dalai Lama, right? Or Elon Musk. Totally different emotion, totally different view of the world, which means we're going to make totally different decisions. And that's what I really love to grow. I love to build entrepreneurs' brain from the old to the new, because the new, that's where you have inspiration, confidence. The future is open, right? That's where you have creative ideas. Over here in the small version, the past, that's where what Jason was talking about before is where we get heightened states. We have to bring it down because you can't think because we're getting cortisone spikes in the brain. It means the brain's just full of chemicals and we can't get clarity. So we have to use all of these tools and we have to use that passion and we have to take control of our inside world so we can build our outside world.
Awesome. You know, one thing that you said that I just want to hit on, because it's been something I implemented in my life for a couple of years now. Well, actually more than a couple of years, because it was while my daughter was going through chemotherapy, was every day I looked for moments I could just stop and everything was okay. You know, like you could be sitting home and your kid, like nobody's sick. Everything's okay right now. Like, yes, tomorrow's uncertain. There's certain things, but if you could just take those moments every now and again to just stop and think right now, everyone's safe. We have a roof over our head. Everything's good. And just enjoy the now. Just take a few minutes to relax and enjoy the now. Yeah, I'm not saying that's going to help you throughout the whole day, but it's going to give you moments of calm where it'll help bring that vibration down a little bit, because that's what a lot of it is. Like, you know, the example my uncle, I remember he told me, because he used to tell me why he woke up at 5 a.m. He said, it's almost like I have bells going off in my head where there's just this vibration. And when he told me that, I said, yeah, that feels like an anxiety. And he said, yeah, it is. But when I get up and move and I do things, it goes away. And that always stuck with me. It's like action. Like if you just sit there, you know, for example, let's say you wake up in the morning and right away you're anxious. You're worried about the day. Well, if you just sit there and lie in bed, that's just going to keep happening. It's not going to go away. It takes a moment. It's like, get yourself up and just move, get up and just like enjoy. Like if everyone's in bed, if everything's okay for that moment, and just enjoy that moment. It's so powerful. It's such a little thing, but it makes such a difference on my life, because at the end of the day, you are not powerless. Yeah, you're not 100% powerless. Yes, certain things are beyond your control, but understanding that certain things are beyond your control, but what the things are that are in your control is where you get the power. And, you know, the truth is during these times, I know many people many people that during the last recession, 2008, that's when they became multi-millionaires, because they were able to fight through that and look for opportunities rather than just sitting there and like crawling in a ball and saying, I give up, I'm done, everything sucks. It's like, and it's so easy to get into that mindset because fear is so bloody powerful, but it takes every day having that courage and determination to get up out of bed and force yourself to do these things. So I hope this is helping everyone. If you have any questions, again, just post them. But we're going to keep going here. So the next thing we want to talk about, the huge thing here is focus. Like, how can you focus? Whether it is like doing whatever you need to during the day. Like, Andy, what are some tips you have for people to help them, especially when there's certain things that they have to get done that day? We did talk about some things earlier, but like right now, when you're feeling overwhelmed, how can you help people get focused?
Yeah, it's so important. It's so important. I mean, there's many actual techniques to extend and do our focus, but just on a general aspect, it's like, first thing, remove the noise, remove what isn't important, right? Because what happens is we have a massive list of things that we think we've got to do, and then we have these to-do lists, and we have all Trello and everything else, and it never stops. But the truth is, there's probably only one or two tasks that you can actually accomplish and get them done, maybe that day. And so that's the first thing. Remove the noise, get clear on what's going to be a needle mover. What's going to be that 1% shift that's going to move us forwards. That's it. That's all you've got to focus on. Second thing is the day. That's the focus. Not what's happening tomorrow, next month, next week, next year, or what happens to the world, or UFOs are going to pop in. It doesn't matter. We can't control any of that. What we can do is do our best each day. From the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, all we can do is our best. If you're feeling sad, do your best to become happy. If you're feeling overwhelmed, do your best to feel calm and get control. Whatever it is, just do your best. And then what we look at is something called batching, which batching means that we're chunking things down into manageable bite-sized pieces. So that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that if you looked at your week, it's like, wow, I can't get through that. But if we chunk it right down into the next task we're going to do, we can do that. Then what happens is when we complete that task, your brain wants to then move on to the next thing, but we can't. When we complete that task, we have to pause for a moment and let serotonin and dopamine flood through our brain because we've accomplished something. At that point, then start the next task, because then we're filled full of chemicals, we've got a win, and then we move to the next task. If we don't do that, this could be, I've got this done, right, the next thing, next thing. This is the wrong emotion going through. You're going to make wrong decisions. I believe everything's got a frequency. And if you're blasting out these words in fear, man, and even a video, I think people feel it, So focus, batching on the day, chunk it down into manageable bite-sized piece, and get rid of the noise or anything that you can't accomplish now.
Awesome. Yeah, and we can't stress that enough. It's little things. I'm going to give you, so right now you see my hair, it's actually just growing back. One of the reasons I shaved my hair was to just remove one more stress in my life. I got rid of about a half of my clothes to remove one more stress. It's these little things in your life that you can do that all of a sudden help you. So when I wake up in the morning, I make sure at night I get everything figured out and I lay my clothes out in the morning. So when I wake up, I'm not sitting there, what do I wear today? And you'll be surprised how those little things, when I shave my head, I'm not recommending everyone shave your head. And I know there's been memes going around of what our hairs are going to look like in a few weeks with no salons. But the idea is if you can just remove some of those little things in your life that just add a little bit of stress, it helps reduce the burden. So I just wanted to add that little part to this too, because every little thing that adds to it causes a blurry vision. And so when you start removing them, you start seeing more clear and clear and clear. And all of a sudden you find it's like you're getting stuff done. And the hard part of this, and Andy, I know you can agree with this, when you're in a state of anxiety, sometimes you feel like you're always in that state. where your mind's just saying, oh my God, I feel like this all the time. And the reality is you don't. And that's why it's so important when you don't feel that way, you do something to remind yourself that, hey, I'm not feeling that way right now. Things are okay right now. And so you can refer to that the next day, and because you're going to lie to yourself. Your brain lies to yourself a lot. And your brain's telling you, oh, I can't stop this feeling. It's like, wait, no, yes, that's not true. Yesterday, I had a great time period. I remember being very happy. And think about those things, those little things about reminding yourself of 3 things that you love. And, try really hard not to always repeat the same thing. For me, I could say my daughter, my wife, and my new puppy. But there's other things. You don't want to keep saying the thing, and look for those hidden gems, those little things that are going to give you just a little bit clarity, that are going to help you with a lot of focus. So yeah, we got a great question actually that was just added. So I'm excited to answer this. But anything else you want to add on that I just talked about, Andy?
It's gratitude. It's gratitude. And when we become present in that moment, and how you remove from anxiety, remember, anxiety is triggered by the unknown of the future, right? So we can bring ourselves present, and presence mean if we literally, like Jason just said, we start listing things that make us grateful, it breaks our focus down and starts picturing those things and start feeling those things. So when we can start to do that, it's a beautiful thing. And I love that you said, mate, don't keep repeating the same things. Something I do is like really deep trance work with people, because we're hitting the unconscious mind and stuff, and people go, oh, that track or that audio or that hypnosis isn't working anymore, right? Because our brain gets used to it, and then we don't feel the same emotions. So what we want to do is keep mixing it up, because we want dopamine, lots of dopamine spikes to go, you know what, I do feel that gratitude from that, because it's novelty, it's new, it's like, oh yeah. So it takes us deeper into the emotion that we want, or the person or the place or the thing, right? So yeah, it's beautiful, mate. Gratitude.
That's awesome. And you've got to remember your mind. Like, yes, your mind's primarily made up of kind of fats, but it's a muscle. You got to look at it that way. And when you talk about exercise, if every day you exercise at the same time and do the same exercises, it's going to stall. All of a sudden, you're not going to get gains. And in fact, you could hurt yourself. And so that's why it's good to mix it up. Sometimes different times during the day, mix up different exercises, because your muscle gets a memory, and all of a sudden it's now trained to do that exercise. So it knows what muscles to use and what ones to not use. So all of a sudden it's too repetitive. You're not gaining anything. But if all of a sudden, instead of doing these kind of curls, all of a sudden you're like just doing a different barbell, a different location, it stimulates growth. And it's the same with your mind. When you do different things, don't get into the same habit and just think, oh, like you said, this doesn't work anymore. Well, you're right, because it's worked as much as it's possibly going to be able to. So now you want to be able to stimulate it in a different way. So that's a great addition. I'm glad you said that.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I got a couple questions here. So Martina, it looks like, I love this. What can help to stop thinking what others think about you?
Hey, I'm going to say the first tactic: get rid of them. I mean that. It's like, remember, everything's replicating around you. So if they're a negative person, or they're like judging you for building an online business or trying something new, then remove them as much as you can from your life. Remember, you only have so much time, effort, and energy. That's your currency, right? You can never, ever get that back again. So what it's to do with, honestly, it's self-love, it's self-worth. I deserve. Because if that person is saying all those things to us and it's affecting us, then what is it inside ourselves that we need to change to be able to make sure that that person, well, it's their problem. It's nothing to do with you. If you're doing your best and you're coming from truth and heartfeltness and all the rest of it, then the only thing your feet should be feeling is like, no, I'm doing my best over here. I'm giving all the love I can. I'm full of self-worth about what I'm doing. So it doesn't matter then about what other people's opinions Haters are always going to be haters, right? The more success you get, the more people are going to go and poke at you. So the journey of entrepreneurism isn't about business. It's really got nothing to do with it. That's you. That's your business. That's you. Your business is like a direct mirror or reflection of who we are at the time. I generally know if someone's business is on point, then their mind around that business is on point, right? There's other key areas of life, I get it. But if their mind's on point, the business is on point. The business is on point, I know the mind's on point. So for you, it's about growth. That's all this is about. And for you to expand past the haters or the people that are judging, well, that's you growing, evolving, getting full of self-worth, getting clear on where you're going, connecting with your mission. So do you think like people like Elon Musk might have had a few people say to him, what are you doing trying to take us to Mars? Why are you trying to build holes under LA? Why are you trying to, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Well, did it stop his purpose? No. He knew inside of himself that he's good enough. He knew inside of himself that the purpose is bigger than someone else's opinion who probably never lived your life. They probably don't know what you're trying to do or what you're thinking in your head. So for somebody, the reason why, I need you to understand this, the reason why they're poking at you is because of this. Einstein said it best. We get boxed in by a boundary condition of our thinking. They cannot see outside of the box. So guess what that lights up? We spoke about it many times. Fear, right? So they're poking at you to pull you into this box that they feel comfortable in, they feel safe in, because they don't know the outside world. But if we expanded that box and you showed them that world, then maybe they'd understand more. But generally, they're not going to. They want to pull you into their little box of reality to keep you safe because they love you. But the truth is, we got to love ourselves more. We got to head towards our mission. And yeah, what you'll find is you become the leader. You lead your own ship and show these people another way to do life, because they will not come with you. They won't. So you have to show them a different way. Hopefully.
Yeah, I've got so many examples of this too. When I first started I'm a perfect example. When I first, before I started my business and I was working, I went for the management role, and I had a family member actually say I wasn't smart enough to get it. And it was like, but for me, I had a why. I had a wife and kid at that time, and I knew like I wanted something different, and that was bigger. I didn't listen to that person, and I still love that person, and I still love that person today, but it doesn't mean you have to like the person. Loving and liking is totally different, and I don't associate with that person because it's just a negative thing. And I have to, and because I don't want that negativity bringing me down. And so I got the job, and then after that, they tried making the excuse, oh, I didn't want you having too much, being cocky going into the interview. And I'm like, well, it didn't work. And then when I started my business, I had family members worried, like, what about pension? What about all these other things? And what I realized for them is it's their fear that they're emitting onto you. They're hung up on needing a pension. And so to them, that's where their fear's based. So they're bringing it out onto you. Now, that's a different scenario than someone being really negative. But with those things, it's like just accepting that that's their point of view, but you don't agree with it. And it's one of those things, let's just agree to disagree. Now, then there's other sides of things. For example, smoking, drinking, not exercising. I know someone very well who their husband was trying to get his wife to stop exercising because he was afraid if she lost weight, she would leave him. And that's such a perfect example of how we do things in life and how people react. And you might, like, you would never guess that because and then he admitted his insecurity, and it helped them so much because it was obviously he had that insecurity. But oftentimes when people are putting this judgment on you, it's because they, as Andy said, there's something missing in them. And if they feel all of a sudden now that you're going to be a higher level than them in some way, it's like, no, 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 you come back down here. I don't want to quit smoking. I need you to keep smoking. I don't want to quit drinking. I need you to keep drinking. All of those kind of things. Now, there's also the things that, like, I'll admit, you know, I've been on stage in front of thousands of people, and there's times where you're just like anxious and you're like, you know, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? And then it's just be yourself. You know, just be yourself. And there's like, that's such a hard thing because there's always going to be worried about what other people think in life. But then there's just got to be a thing where you just accept, I am who I am. And if they don't like who I am, I can't control that. I'm not going to be something different for them just because they're telling me. Now, that doesn't mean you be you be ignorant about it. For example, when I used to smoke cigarettes, I would never smoke in front of certain family members because I knew it upset them. That was a love thing. That wasn't me being fake. It was a respect and love for that person. So I made sure, like, I didn't want to do anything around them because I just loved and respected them. So that's one thing. Don't feel like, oh, I'm being fake. No, you're loving and respecting that person. But if someone is being harsh to you and like negative, and it's preventing you from being not only who you are, but who, more importantly, you're trying to become, what your goal is, the sad thing is, I agree with Andy, it's like you've got to exit them from your life. And it doesn't mean you completely abandon them, but just back away. And maybe it does mean that you completely abandon them because at the end of the day, if it's making you a miserable person, you know, my goal in life is I want to change the world. I want to affect people. I want people to be happier. You know, I realize life is so hard. And my goal, what my why is my tombstone, is I want what my wife and children put on my tombstone, not to just be my name and say he was a hard worker. I want them to say he was a loving, amazing man that changed the world. And that's what's the most important thing for me. And so if someone's going to stop me from doing that, I'm not going to be around them because you're preventing me from hitting what means the most to me in my life. So if that person's doing that, step back. You know, that's really what you got to do. Another great question here. We've got, and we've gotten some great comments like this is gold, this is well needed. So that's awesome. Tina's got a great question here. I love this one. How do you deal with a significant other who has anxiety when you don't?
Hey, very interesting. So first of all, we got to get specific. What I mean by that is what specifically is causing the anxiety. So we need to know what that cause is. We need to know the root cause because he could be, again, make believe in something else. He could be thinking about the past. He could be just, what is it? What specifically is causing that anxiety? So that could be a time in the day. It could be a day, like on a Sunday night. It's like everyone starts freaking out because it's Monday. It's like, what specifically is it? And from there, lead the ship. So just because you don't have anxiety doesn't mean that we shouldn't be having mental performance. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be meditating. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing routines and all of these things. So the best way to do it is to lead the ship, right? So he will then see you and follow, because right now, do you think he wants to feel like that? No, not at all. He doesn't want to feel like that. He's looking for a way out, and that's causing more anxiety, by the way. And you not having anxiety is causing him more anxiety. And then the situation, it's constant. So if you sat down together, one, you can talk about how or what, is causing specifically the anxiety. The second thing is, it doesn't really matter after that, right? You can talk about it, but then the nervous system's still going to be all fired up. So then we've got to take control. So that's routines, that's your audios, your hypnosis stuff, that's your binaural beats, that's your meditations, that's your eating correctly. I don't know his diet. I don't know his sleep patterns. I don't know whether he's using stimulants. I haven't got a clue, right? So all of these things, you might, again, like Jason said before, if you're having 7 cups of coffee a day, then it's going to create anxiety. So we've got to work out that baseline. But besides, once we've worked out that baseline, you'll probably be able to eliminate stuff. But then it's you leading the ship. And you develop a routine together that brings you together, and you go and solve this together. 1, you're going to feel amazing. 2, your business is going to grow. 3, your relationship will get better because you're bonding. And 4, he's not going to have anxiety anymore, or he's going to be able to manage it, which means he's going to be literally, and I mean this, and Jason, I'm sure will agree, he's going to be a different version of himself. He's going to be a different person. Because when you're in that anxious state, man, whoa, everything's chaos. You can be angry, you can be aggressive at people, everything just thought it's too much. So by getting him out of that, you're going to find a bright, happy, partner.
Yeah, a big thing and this is such a good question, because I know so many people, and thankfully, I have an incredible wife who herself has gone through anxiety, and so she relates. And so, if you're someone, there's also the natural fact. For example, I've had my blood work done, and there was a point where my serotonin was actually very low. And so just by default, I was more susceptible at that time to anxiety than somebody else. But a lot of that has, like, probiotics, for example, like the things you put in your body help make it, because they produce more serotonin. It really helps you. So first of all, like, it's trying to have sympathy for the person, that what they're going through is real. Do not say things like, get over it. Just be happy. Because those kind of things, all of a sudden you're diminishing what they're feeling, and it makes it feel worse. And they'll pull away from you, because it's like, you don't get me. This is real. It's when I used to deal with youth group. And so when I'm talking to these kids, you've got some 14-year-old kids that are even taller than you, and they're saying things to you, and you're just thinking in your mind, you're an idiot. You don't say that though, because it's like, you try to tell them, like, what you're worried about right now in the grand scheme of things is so little, but the reality for them at that moment, it's huge. And so by you telling them they're an idiot, that's not something to worry about, all of a sudden you're doing is belittling them and making them pull away from you, first of all, and not giving them a skill to deal with it. So first of all, helping to understand, to acknowledge that they have anxiety, they're going to be this way. So first of all, you have to be a different person. You can't just judge them and say things, because that's not going to help. Then the other thing is, watch out. Me and my wife watch out for each other. If all of a sudden I see, you can usually tell by their face, like, they just look, solemn, and there's just things going on, or they're shaky or whatever. Get them to, if you're in an area where you can go for a walk, get them out of the house. Go for a car ride. Just talk, maybe try to arouse them sexually, like, just do something to get them out of that state, get them to play games, sing songs together, just try to do something to pull them out of that state. Watch what they're eating, watch what they're consuming. If they're drinking a lot, try to give them something else to do. Those things have made such a big impact. I know for me and my wife, those help so much, because it's going to happen. They're going to fall into traps. And so it's up to you to pull them out. Now, it's not your responsibility for them. You're not responsible for them. And that's a big thing too, is you've got to help them understand is they have to be responsible for their own happiness. You can't make them happy. You can't make them non-anxious, but you can help them. You can assist them do those things. So I hope that helps, because that's from personal experience. I know that, number one, don't belittle it. Number two, try to pull them out of it. Try to get them focused on happier things. Talk about things. For example, me and my wife talk about, like, what are the realities in life right now? Number one, we have a roof over our head. Number two, and this is for me, and I know this doesn't acknowledge for everyone, but we have a good, healthy savings. So we're safe right now. Number three, our daughter is healthy. She's, like, taken care of. So there are things that, you are in control. Yeah, there's going to be other things that you're not, but just make sure you get a reality check. Because sometimes too, when they're in this mess, all of a sudden they're going to start worrying, does she even love me anymore? Is my, because I'm feeling so low self-worth. And so by you showing them and supporting them and loving them, it just gives them that little bit less of anxiety. Anything to add on that, Andy?
No, that's beautiful, mate. I've suffered with anxiety for a long, long time. And since I probably was a kid and didn't realize it was anxiety, I thought it was being amped up, ready to go. And then not being in that place felt like I was not moving forwards. And it's not until you feel what it's feel like to live without anxiety for a week or two, and you realize the way you were living before is absolutely crazy. It's crazy. But we don't, in society, people don't teach these tools. It's all about grinding, pushing, more. But the truth is, it's all fake. That's the thing you don't understand, unless you've got anomalies like people like Elon, right? Who can work 18 companies in 22 hours a day. He's barely a human. You know what I mean?
He wants to do that. He likes to, like, he'll sleep under his desk. Like, he does things, and he knows. He's even said this, that he doesn't think he's going to have a long life at times because he's putting so much on his life. But his why is so much bigger that that's what he wants. That's how he wants. So a big thing with that too, which is good, is don't compare yourself to those people. Do not compare yourself to anyone. You are you. I have no idea what you've been through in your life. You have no idea what I've been through. And so with that, if you're judging people, well, then what you're doing is you're assuming that you know everything about that, and that's ignorance. That's just ignorance. So don't do that, and don't let other people do that to you.
No.
Trey asked, how do I turn off the distraction of thinking about the things I'm missing that I'm used to doing, and to concentrate on my business for the needed attention it needs?
Interesting, right? So what's happening, we go back to basics. What's happening in the brain is the amygdala, bing, bing, bing. What's happening? Fight, flight, or freeze response. So what you're doing right now is your brain is wanting a chemical called dopamine, okay? So what's happening is dopamine's produced with novelty, with the new. It can be negative habit or a positive pattern. It doesn't matter. What your brain is doing right now is, because it's such a big, overwhelming future and we don't know what's going on, it's looking to escape. Plain and simple. It's looking for an exit strategy. It's looking to hide, okay? But the truth is, we can only hide for so long, because that's what people are doing, Netflix and chilling, but the world keeps moving. And then they're going to realize they're a month behind everybody else who kept moving forward. So it comes back down to perspective. Comes back down to perspective. When you are about to do the escapism, guess what? We have to start learning to do a technique called interrupting the pattern, okay? Because remember, the neurology just wants to loop. That's all it wants to do, loop and complete, loop and complete. That's what's happening in our brain, okay? So by doing routines or learning how to step into a peak state or an alter ego is going to help this process. But the truth is, we just need to connect with that why, what's the biggest purpose, and then we need to start developing our routines. Because when the situation wasn't happening, you would have had, well, a schedule or a routine of what you did. And so the world's happened, the chaos in the world's happened, so it's kind of give your brain a little excuse to do other things. But what that does is it takes us out of that routine. And when we're out of that routine, guess what? Our brain goes wild, because that's what happens. We're humans, right? So we get triggered by the past, this. So it's about getting back into that sequence. Remember, the day, that's all we're doing, right? The next task. So if you wrote down the next 3 tasks that you're going to do, you put yourself in the right emotion, you watched the right things, you programmed your brain the right way. We had a little system that took you into feeling good and being in a peak place. Binaural beats in, everything else I've been talking about, then guess what? And then we connect to, oh, my kids and everything. Let's get this done. Right? And then you commit to a time block. Because what people do is, I've got to do all these things for this month. No. What can I get done for the next 90 minutes? What can I accomplish in the next 90 minutes that if I do will move the needle towards where I want it to go? And so when you combine all those things, buddy, it's a case of, well, that becomes exciting. And then we start looking for dopamine. This is the beautiful thing I teach. We look for dopamine in drugs, alcohol, escapism. We can also look for dopamine in growth inside of our business, right? Because it's all new. As we're expanding this thing, our brain, that becomes exciting. So that's how we can keep this perpetual motion going, is by constantly, expanding our business, which expands us. So hopefully that answered it. I know it wasn't quite, but we went around in a little circle there.
So I have some great things to add on this too.
Cool.
So this is all good, man. This is all great advice. So for example, so what I tried doing last year, I'm a big, one of my things is to give people freedom. That's what our business is all about. And the idea is to, what freedom is it's not meaning that you don't have to work hard. It means that you get to work hard on what you're most wanting to work on. So for my business, one of the things that I wanted to try was traveling while working. Well, I can't, because I need more of a daily routine. When I started traveling, what would happen is, whether you had to check out from a hotel, whether you had to get an airplane, the time zones, all those things. So I went away to Europe for a month last year. It was horrible. If I would have went for a month of a vacation, that would have been great. But to go for a month of travel, it's like, okay, this is too hard. I can't function this way because I like a little bit more of a routine. But I was able to, as a couple of weeks ago, I realized, okay, so what are the most important things I've got to get done? Because that's another big thing, is it's like, right now, so for example, with my travel thing, that was a choice. You don't have a choice right now. You're being told to work from home. So now all of a sudden, it's like you have all of these distractions. And you're worried about, like, what am I missing? And there's these other things that used to happen, but now they don't. It's like, well, first of all, it's understanding, again, what are you in control of? What are you not? And so that's easy to say, I understand it. But then it's like, what is the most important thing I could be doing today for my business? Mm-hmm. Asking that one question and just getting that one thing done. Because if all of a sudden you make a list of 10 things, and all of a sudden you're just on the first one, all of a sudden you get a phone call that distracts you from that, and there's like no way you're getting the rest of your list done. What you've just done is amplified your anxiety. Because now not only are you feeling stressed that you didn't get that done, you're feeling bad about yourself because it's like, geez, I'm not very productive. It's like, no, you're productive. You're just way overloading yourself with what you should be working. Because I guarantee 8 out of those things did not have to get done today. Because, and that's one thing, there's a book called The One Thing. And what I love about that book is it talks about you're going to have to let things slide. You can't have everything as the one thing to focus on. What is the one thing in your business today, in your health, in your family, mentally? There's only one thing in those things. Focus on those. Get that done. Once that one thing's done, and as Andy said, I love that. And I wish I could give credit to the guy that said it. He was a copywriter, told this to me years ago. And he worked in the 50-minute, 10-minute areas. So what that did is he put a timer. He worked for 50 minutes straight. So at that time, using Andy's advice and my advice, put your binaural beats in. Focus. Have your sun lamp on if you have one, like whatever. But focus for 50 minutes. Once that timer goes off, unplug yourself, pull the chair away, stand up. Now deal with everything. Check on your kids, check on everything, do what you need to do. Make sure once that 10 minutes is over, if you can get back, focus on another 50 minutes. And that way, when you're focusing on those 50 minutes, don't open your email, have your phone, try. It's so hard, so I'm 47, so I do remember a lot of things before the internet, and there used to be no call waiting, and we survived. So if someone was on the phone, things happen. But nowadays with our phone, it's like, whether it's like TikTok, don't worry, I'm not the 47-year-old guy on TikTok. I don't do that, but you've got all these distractions. And so what you need to do is focus time. In this 50 minutes, I understand there's all these other things I wish I could be every day. If you're running a business, there's two things. A business has an insatiable appetite to spend money and to have things to do. And so you just got to realize that's just the truth. That doesn't mean that's an acknowledgement, an excuse to let those things be. You still have to run your business very fiscally and not spend money on things. And you have to focus on things that make the biggest difference. And so if you're sitting there allowing like every other little distraction to distract you, when the reality is, I just can't focus on that right now. Take that 50 minutes, write down in your book, okay, right now, just the one thing you want to get done today, focus on 50 minutes. And here's the other thing too, is don't just write down, let me think of it. For example, don't just write down, going to do an interview with Andy. Actually what you do first of all is write down what it is today you need to get accomplished. So for example, email Andy, ask him what the questions are for the day. And I want to also talk to the video team to make sure that they schedule everything. So be very specific on what you want to get accomplished that day. Because if you just say, I want to do this, well, all of a sudden it's like, oh, but I still have 17 other things to do on that. Well, that's what you figure out once you get that one thing done. It's like, okay, I got those done. What next has to be done on this? Does this have to be done today, or can it be done tomorrow now because I got this all done? Cool, it can be done tomorrow. What do I do now? And just by working in those little segments, for me, like, look, so I've been working, like I said, I've been running a business since 2005. I've only actually worked in an office for 3 years out of those 15 years. And then we moved to work from home. I understand what it's like. I get it. You've got kids, you've got everything going on. Sometimes, it's just a crappy day. Maybe it's raining outside and it's cold and you're just sitting there, and it's like, that's why you've got to focus. Take those 50 minutes, get those things done, and just focus. And what you'll find, and I'm serious about the binaural beats. And again, I'm a big fan of Brainwave, and there's one called Quiet Mind. All of a sudden you're sitting there and you feel like you're in flow, like you're in the zone and you're just going. And then when those 10 minutes come up, yeah, you might get all of a sudden, it's like, oh, life and some anxieties come back at you or whatever. But you just had 50 minutes of productivity and you've just brought your vibration down a little bit. So I hope that works. That's my advice.
Good advice, man.
Cool. Okay, so where are we with time? 7 minutes. Okay, Manuela asks, do you know how to keep concentrated in a presentation while you're speaking to everyone? I've got lots of advice on this, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, please give it, mate. Please give it. And then I'll give my 2 pennies worth.
So first of all, the big thing here is shut that. Like, so for right now, for example, what I'm trying to do is look at questions. We had a little bit of technical issues on this. I've got one of our video guys on here. So we got it handled, but there was a little bit of a distraction. There's certain things where, you have to. I'll give you an example. So me and Matt were interviewing Sir Richard Branson on stage in front of 2,500 people. They weren't putting the right questions up on the monitor. So me and Matt are sitting there looking at each other, and it's like we had two options to do at that time, is to flip out, freak out, and get distracted, or it's like, let's just ask questions. We don't have a choice. We've got to do it. So there's going to be times where it's like, it's not going how you want. But what would have been worse if at that time I had my cell phone ringing, if I had all of these distractions. So the big thing is like, shut stuff off. Turn off WhatsApp, turn off Skype, turn off every distraction. Because sometimes entrepreneurs are, I would say 95%, in my opinion, have some form of anxiety. And that's why they're an entrepreneur. That's not an excuse to continue. And Andy, you just talked about that. You had anxiety and you felt like there's something more I need to do. Like when you have that anxiety, you're not satisfied with the now. There's an excuse. I've got to do something else. But that doesn't mean that that's how you're going to be, like you want to be that way all the time. So first of all, just shut off all those distractions, turn everything off, and try to just focus on the one thing that you should be doing at that time. And try to shut off in your mind that you need those distractions, especially if you're the owner of your company, because like it's your company. At the end of the day, you can't make excuses for anything. It's on you to run that company. You're the boss. So that's why you need to focus on one thing at a time and make sure you do it as well as possible. That's my advice. I'd love to hear your opinion.
Hey, it's pretty damn good advice. I think, was the question, just to reiterate the question, that was like, also, it's like being present on stage, was it?
So they gave two parts to it. So do you know how to keep concentrated in a presentation while you are speaking to everyone, no matter if it's online like this or in present?
Beautiful, beautiful. My advice, just care who you're talking to. You know, if you really care about the audience and the message you're trying to do and you're helping, then like I'm here, right? I care. I genuinely hand on heart care. And so what that means is then, how can I lose focus? Because what I'm doing is really sitting with someone, really trying to help them. And if it's an online presentation, then understand that it might be going out to thousands of people, but you just look in the camera like it's one person. Just talk to one person, right? So I'm helping that one person. And if I'm helping that one person and I'm doing my best to help them, then it doesn't really matter, right? You can't lose distraction. And if you do lose distraction, just say, then just talk to yourself. Ask a question. What's the next thing I can teach? What's the next thing I can tell? Can I ask a question, right? So self-talk is how we really create high performance, but that's a whole different conversation. So just my advice, just really care who you're talking to and the message and what you're trying to give over, and you will just flow.
So, and one other piece of advice I actually have is, you know, especially if you're doing webinars and presentations, get a coach. You know, that's why Andy's here, is he was a coach of mine for a few years, because you need that help. Find someone, and this isn't an affiliate relationship. I'm not trying to plug Andy. We will give you a link so you can learn more about Andy if you want to, but use people like Andy. That's what they're here for. They're people that have been through this. They can give you those things. I also worked with Todd Herman, another performance guy. It's heavy, and that's the thing. It's like, work with people, and you might find that person worked for you for a while, but then they don't work anymore. That's fine. You know, keep working with people to get those different things, and you'll find that'll help a lot. But another one, and I don't want to sound hokey because I know a lot of people say this, but meditation. For me, before I start my day, before I have any coffee or anything, I meditate for 20 minutes.
Yes.
And what it does is it just calms me down. And during that time, I actually figure things out. And then before I have to do something like a big presentation, I meditate. And it's only for 10 minutes at that time, but it's just enough so that I calm myself down, I get my breathing in tune, and you focus. And then, like Andy said, who are you talking to, and what is it that you want to deliver to them? What value do you want to deliver to them? And so do they need your focus? So if you're sitting there focusing on all these other things, you're not delivering the best value to them. So you need to force yourself to shut those things off and just focus on giving that value, and they'll feel it. They'll feel it because all of a sudden no, this person's talking to me. They're not distracted. And you know, I've learned so many lessons. I remember I was a manager, this was years ago, at this company called Warehouser, and we were doing a safety meeting. And I was out in the corner because I already heard this safety meeting, all the information, because from the leadership team, they gave it to us. So when I went down to my team and do it, but I turned around and started doing something else. And all of a sudden, my team came up to me after that, and they said, during that whole presentation, I didn't even listen because I figured if you didn't care about it, why should I care about it? So if someone sees that you're constantly distracted, they're going to say, well, this person doesn't really care. They're more worried about everything else. That's going to resonate with you. And I'm not trying to put more stress on you saying, oh, great, that's what keeps happening. Well, realize that and refocus and say, okay, I need to shut this stuff off because they need me right now. They need me for this one thing. And I remember when I first jumped on stage back in 2013, I remember my business partner, Matt Clark, was like, because I just oozed confidence right off the get-go. And it's because I knew what I wanted to say and I knew who I wanted to talk to. And people were like, wow, you're a natural. And it's like, well, I guess that's how you become a natural, is you get very clear on what you want to accomplish and who it is you're talking to. and you'll ooze confidence because you have clarity. If you're trying to talk to 20 different audiences, you're going to be all over the map. You're going to be losing focus. It's going to be almost impossible. You focus in and it makes a huge difference.
Love it. Love it.
Are you good to go a little bit longer?
Yeah, mate, let's keep going. We're here. Let's keep helping,
And we got a couple more questions. And if you can hang with us and you're still with us, awesome. The fear of failure is paralyzing my forward progression with starting my private label product. Any suggestions on how to overcome that? I have lots. So I'm going to hog this one first, and then I'll hand
Do it, mate. Do it. I'm interested to learn.
So first of all, fear of failure is probably the biggest reason for failure out there. The fear of failure itself, because what's your easiest reaction to fear is to avoid it. It's not to fight it, it's to run, to hide. And it's a huge release of stress when you can just delete. When you can say, you know what, this is causing me stress, delete, walk away, go back to how life was before. So the first thing you need to do is have your why. And we say that over and over again, but it's to really figure out, why do I want this? If you just say, I want to be rich, sorry. I mean, it might work for you, but I know that would never work for me. Money was never the thing. It was the freedom. I didn't want to have to work 12-hour days lining someone else's park. What happened to me is the CEO of our company in Weyerhaeuser back in 2013 abolished all bonuses. And I'm sitting there working like 12-hour days, literally, because the way the shifts were, and I was the boss and I had to be there early for the meetings. I had to write all my reports after it. And I'm sitting there, and it wasn't even just me. I remember there's this guy, Brian Davis, who he should have been the highest paid guy in the company, and he was a maintenance guy, but that guy was incredible. And I'm sitting there thinking, you greedy son of a bee. These people are working their butt off, and you're sitting there controlling, lining your own pocket. And guess what happened? That year, he got a $7.5 million stock option thing. They ended up giving him all this money. So it was at that moment that I realized this isn't for me. That's when my why came. It's like, I want to be able to have the freedom to do things with my family. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to not miss my daughter's events. I want to be able to spend more time with my wife. I don't want to have to work on weekends for someone else. If I'm going to work on a weekend, it's going to be for me. So when I got that clarity, all of a sudden, when I would get home from work after those 12 hours, I'd spend time with my family. Me and my wife would go to bed. As soon as she was about to fall asleep, I'd get out of bed and I'd start work. And I'd focus a couple hours to get that done, because there was no way I was going to stay in the same situation. And believe me, there was so many moments when I wanted to give up. Remember when PayPal, we launched our business, it became really successful. And all of a sudden PayPal froze our account. I just quit my jobs 2 days before that. I was spread eagle on the floor, just going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I could have got on the phone, begged for my job back, but no, it's like, I'm going to figure this out. My why is so big. I've got to do it. Believe me, when you talk about paralyzing fear, when you have because I invested all of my money into this business, and now PayPal's saying, not only is your money on hold, you put so much money in this account in such a short time, because this business just took off. It was really cool. It was a business called Portal Feeder back in the day. It took off so fast that they're like, we don't trust that this is a real business, and there's a good chance you're going to lose all your money. And I'm like, what am I going to do? But we figured it out. First of all, we recognized, okay, being anxious and paralyzed like this isn't going to help anybody. So you breathe, you just try to bring back focus. Then it's like, what do I need to do right now? What's the most important thing? So for you with your business, your most important thing right now is, first of all, picking a product. Because before you can do anything, you've got to have something to sell. Don't worry about am I going to have to pay income tax? Am I going to have to do all these other things? Until you have a business running, first of all, yes, you are going to pay income tax. You are going to have to do all these things. So that's why once things get going, you want professional help. But pick little goals. Don't sit there and say, oh, I have all this work to do. No, you don't. Your first step is picking a product that you want to start with. Once you have that product, then what's the most important thing I can do right now? So you've got the product, well, now find a supplier. And it's by taking those little segments and just focusing niche specific on exactly what you have to accomplish and always having that goal. And that's what Andy said. My wife actually, it's a little messy, but I'll show you over there on the ottoman there. She's working on her dream board. You know, it's doing those things over and over again, having things like, and it doesn't have to be fancy. What I used to do, and I had a picture of a Porsche, a boat, and a tropical island. And I accomplished all three of those things in my life. And that was where I started, is I put the three things that really, really were something that I wanted to be able to personally accomplish. Is I love Porsches, I love traveling, and I love being on the water. And so I knew that I couldn't accomplish those things working for this company. And I wanted to enjoy them with my family. So I kept them in front of me. And so that I was constantly keeping that energy of, it's like, yes, this road bump right now, it is so much not worth quitting to get what I want over there. So, Andy, buddy.
Mate, I think you covered it. The only thing I'd add is I like to change the word sometimes from why to what's your mission. Because some people can sometimes, why is the right word, but some people like different semantics, you know? Some people like different ways. What's your purpose? Well, that might work for someone. What's your why might work for someone. Or someone might be listening, they don't work. So what's your mission? What's your mission? What are you doing, right? What are you going to accomplish? The two questions I'd ask is this. What would happen if you do get this product launched and out and successful? What's going to happen? What would happen? The opposite question is, what wouldn't happen if you don't get it out? Right? What's going to happen if you don't get it out? Right, we're going to live in a state of anxiety, maybe fear. Oh, I'm going to be broke. Right, those are the consequences. So what happens if you do get this out into the world? Okay. Well, guess what? We can create this. I can help this. We're going to do that. Right. So where do we need to direct our time, effort, and energy, which is our currency? Right. That becomes irrelevant. And then we connect to the mission or the why or the purpose. That's the energy. That's the fuel that keeps us driving forwards. Just like what Jason said then, it's a case of there was no ifs or buts about it that he was going to launch a business. There was no ifs or buts. It didn't matter if it took an extra month, 2 months, 3 months. Who cared? It was happening. You know what I mean? I remember being in New Zealand, like I'm old now too, mate. So it's like, but I remember being 27 and I was the top performer in investment real estate in 2 different countries. I was training CEOs on mental performance, setting up departments, sales teams, all the rest of it. Everything went away in 2008. I lost everything. I went into living in the basement of an MMA gym, training and fighting every day, and watch my BMW get taken away from me. And I was on the other side of the world on my own, right, in New Zealand. And now what? This is the situation. Now what? What are you going to do now? You're going to stay here, or are we going to do that? Let's go and do that. Do we know what's going to happen? No. But we have to get clear on a few different things. And that is, how do you want your life to be? And here's the key question. I'll give you the key question. How do you want to experience your business? How do you want to experience your life? You want to earn $1 million? Cool. Many ways to do it. How do you want to experience earning that $1 million? Because you could be an international arms dealer, or you could be like helping someone in an Amazon business. It doesn't matter, right? It's the case of how do you want to experience your life? And if you want to experience your life or your business in the stress and the fear or the panic of not putting it out, then hey, that's fine. Or you want to experience actually on the journey of growth to see what's possible, then that's a different mission.
You know? Right on. Yeah, no, this is great. Okay, this is going to be our last question. This is Hollywood.
It's going to get dark soon, buddy.
How best to handle the many people who say, and we covered this a little bit already, but I love it. I think it's a great way to end. How best to handle the many people who say things like, oh, you're trying to sell on Amazon, question mark, it's so oversaturated and it'll be almost impossible. So I want to step back for a minute. So we're going to answer that question specifically, but this is anything in life. You're going to always have the naysayers. So what we talked about earlier is, first of all, I had this with my family. I remember like my father-in-law, my sister-in-law, all those people, like I'd show them what I was doing and they're like, oh, and they'd walk away. And I remember there was a time where my wife said, she literally quoted the Jerry Maguire movie, show me the money, because all I kept doing is spending money in the business. But that was the thing. First of all, if you take the advice of me and Andy, is first of all, it's like understanding your mission, your why, the reason why you want to do this. What is your mission? You know, we have a great success story with the Zigglers where their mission was they want to do they're doing a mission of saving eyes. Like they have this dry eye mission where they go to Jamaica and help people, because people that suffer from that, it's very painful. That's their reason for doing things. So and that doesn't have to be your reason. Your reason could simply be is you just want to get out of your current situation. You don't want to live in this house anymore. You hate where you live and you want something more out of your life. But just get really clear on that and make sure it's something that's driving you. That's something that's willing to get you out of bed in the morning. That's something when roadblocks come, it's bigger than those roadblocks. Because if it's not, then you're going to quit. Because if it's just something kind of vague and a little bit there, when those roadblocks come up, when those negative people come up, you're going to be like, it's not worth it. And you're kicking stones and you're like, okay, I'm going back to life. You gave up on yourself. So don't do that. First of all, understand what you want. Number two, and we talked about this earlier, if you can, remove them. Get them out of your way. Don't talk to them about your business. Don't brag about your business. Keep it to yourself. This is your mission. This is your why. It's not theirs. You know, oftentimes, and this is where legalism comes in and everything, something works for somebody. So, I became a Bible-believing Christian back in 1997. And this isn't going to be a preacher thing. But when that happened to me, I thought, I have to save everyone in this world. Everyone has to feel what I'm saying. I got on a soapbox. I lost so many friends and family members at that time because it was what was needed for me. And so it wasn't what was needed for them at that time. So when I realized that, and I realized, how about I just be who I am? So they're curious about who I am and why my life is leading the way it is. So then I can talk to them. So right now, don't tell them about the business, because when your business does take off, I guarantee you they're going to be interested in what you're doing and you can brag about it at that time. So that's the second thing. Remove them and just keep it to yourself. Now, if it's family members, sit down and talk to them. Tell them why this is so important. Just say, I understand you don't get it. And that's totally fine. You don't have to get it, but this is so important for me. And when you're negative like that, it really, really suppresses me and it causes issues. I'll tell you right now that is going to be a huge savior right there. Just doing that and believing that you can do this. Amazon is not oversaturated. There's always opportunities. There's always